Hi, I'm Justin Spring from SOULSPEAK. I wanted to say a few words to you about the video you're about to see. It's a selection from an interview I had with Patricia Caswell, who's the Executive Director of the Sarasota County Arts Council.
For Sarasota Arts Today, here's your host, Patricia Caswell.
Hey, I'm Patricia Caswell. In my day job, I'm the Executive Director of the Sarasota County Arts Council. But one of the fun parts of my job is to get to talk to the most interesting people in Sarasota in the arts, and I have one of them right here with me, Justin Spring of SOULSPEAK. It's a poetry group, and Justin is a poet.
A poet.
And you're taking poetry to a new and different form, and we want to hear about it. What are you doing in poetry? How do you make poetry new? It's very old.
Well, in fact, the thing that we did is we made a form that is a kind of technical version of what poetry was 40,000 years ago, where people used masks and then they painted their bodies and there were many people speaking at once and chanting and moving. We can't do that anymore. That would be hard for us to do.
Because you can't get the people, or?
I think we're too conscious of ourselves. That's a very unconscious poetry to move to. It's a very spiritual poetry. It's almost close to prayer. But we felt that we could bring in all those things through sound and through pictures. So the thing that we've done is we've taken a poem, just say in case of a written poem, and we've created a narrative for it that's a picture or some kind of animation or little artwork, okay? Then we've also kind of overlaid it with music and an oral poem on top of it. So it's many levels of things going on at once.
And we will get to see one in a little while.
Okay, great.
And so how does that, so in other words, you bring in the visual and the movement that was in ancient poetry that is no longer there because people are too inhibited to do that now. But it still evokes the same in the
We're participants now by looking. We've changed our nature. We're not in the art anymore. We're looking from the outside.
It's kind of sad.
It is sad. I wish people would do more poetry, but it's a way to bring them in. You know, I found, surprisingly, that since we started to make videos about a year ago, that people are starting to get what we're doing as poets, which is a multi-voiced singing musical poem. People aren't used to listening and relaxing and just listening with their ears. They have to see something. That's just it helps immensely. And that person has to, that I've had so many people come to me and say, you know, I really got that poem. That's because they're able to see a layer that allowed them to crawl into it, you know?
You know, I'm remembering something La Musica, chamber music, did. They had some very, very contemporary music, and that when they set it to film, people listened and liked it ever so much more, where they probably may have walked out if they hadn't have watched something.
Right. The art of listening, which we can see happened before, well, let me go back about 3,000 years to the age of Homer, where his poems would
When you were a kid.
When I was a kid, right? You were right behind me, if I remember.
I deserve that. Keep going.
I was stretching right back there. But his poems took 3 days to recite. So you had to be a listener. You had to be a listener, you see. And people don't have that patience anymore, or that talent.
Or the time.
Or the time, right?
We're used to 30 seconds.
30 seconds fast. So you have to get it over fast, and you have to get it visually. You have to get an entrance to the eyes. We are very eye.
Do you think our brains are moving faster too, just catching all this information, like 30,000 bits of information every hour?
I think you see in the young people are doing 3 or 4 things at once, which I've always done as a kid, even as a, I like to have 4 or 5 things just going in my head at once. They just seem to take that place. That's in fact the nature of our poetry that we do, is 3 or 4 or 5 things going on at once. So I like that. Most people don't like it. People who are musicians like it. It's like a fugue with a very kind of leitmotifs going in and out, you know. But people who are used to looking at print, they want one thing to happen after the other. They're kind of upset by it. They don't know how to adjust to it.
Do you think it could be a generational thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think if you go back 2 or 3 generations, they're absolutely puzzled by what kids are doing today in terms of how many things at once they're doing.
Are they puzzled by the SOULSPEAK video?
Usually. They want it to slow down, or there's too many things going. There's 2 voices talking. I can only hear one. That's a real generational thing. It's a kind of window that they've made for themselves on how to accept things in. But at the same time, that same woman or man probably has some grandkids who are running around the house, 3 or 4, all talking at once. They understand it. Just that poetry isn't supposed to be that way. See what I mean?
It's not conventional.
So it's
now,
a
I
window.
wonder if we should just go ahead and you should introduce one so we see what you're talking about.
Imagine you're driving late at night.
I'm looking at you in the mirror.
Along a high coastal road.
I can see you.
Somewhere in northern Ethiopia.
I can talk to you.
There are 3 or 4 others with you in the car.
I can feel you.
Staring out the window at their own reflections in the dark.
I want to touch you.
Off in the distance,
I turn out the lights.
a huge bloom of heat lightning.
I can see your eyes.
Illuminates the troubled sky.
Touch me.
Suddenly, every blood cell in your body races to your face and throat.
Touch me with your eyes.
As if you're racing toward the greatest moment of your life.
Walk out of the mirror.
And then you realize you're about to die.
Stand beside me.
You try to say something
Take my hand.
to the others. But nobody seems to care.
Take my hand.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Take my hand.
Not anymore.
Justin, that was unique. One more minute before the break. Tell me a little bit about that video.
That video has several windows into it. You know, poetry today has become a lost art. People don't read it anymore. They don't care about it. And part of the reason is that we're used to watching television now or just listening to music. People don't read as much anymore. This affords several windows into poetry. There's a visual window, which is the story that's being told, the artwork. There's a musical window, which is the music. There's a performance window, which is the spoken poem. And there's also the written poem for those people who like that window into poetry, who still have that window into poetry.
So whatever your thing is that your brain gravitates to,
go towards that, and that'll lead you to the others.
Now, some of the work that you do in the community, first of all, I want to ask you about your mission. I think it's such a cool mission to bring poetry into the everyday lives of everyday people.
Right. I feel about that deeply, by the way. Although I was brought up differently, to think it was an Ivy League kind of just for intellectuals
Or
and all
Ivy
that
Tower.
ivory tower kind of stuff. But in fact, I've changed my mind completely over the years.
Yeah,
It's
for
a human
people.
art. It's
Yes.
everybody should be doing
Yes.
a poem once in a
And
while.
so there are some ways that you get everybody involved, including people at hospice.
We work with people of all kinds who have a need to express themselves but can't do it. That's one thing that's happened to us today. We've become very closed. People in grief, real grief, often don't know how to express it. We've kind of lost the institutions and ways of doing it. SOULSPEAK allows them to do that in groups. We've been very successful. We've been working now for about 5 months at hospice here in Southwest Florida, a very advanced
They're a good
nonprofit.
group.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
very good,
Yeah.
and we've had incredible results because SOULSPEAK kind of, it just makes the poem. It just comes to you and you speak it just as though you were a real poet. It just comes right out of you, you know. So here in the case where they're locked in grief, those poems of grieving come out, and it's a way of honoring the dead, you know, and of you're standing up to death if you can, you know. So we've had
So do
wonderful
they get
results.
to keep a record of their poem then?
All right. In fact, all the poems that they make, in fact, we record every one of them. So they have an album when they leave. They have a written album too if they want to write them down. And in fact, we advise them to play them all the time because it's like bringing flowers to the grave of the dead. But these are flowers of the heart.